lot of other things change. We believe that the agricultural system all over the world will improve as more and more people eat more and more vegan food. There'll be less cruelty, there'll be less confinement and killing of billions of animals, and there'll be much less pollution for the soil, the water, and the air. And there'll be a lot more healthy people walking around. That's our idea, and it's proven by science. And so we hope that everything that we're doing is convincing you to keep shifting in this direction and tell your family and your friends, the young people most of all. So what we're doing here is setting up for something unique. We've never done this here before. I want to introduce RBerry. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm RBerry. I'm so glad to be here with you tonight. These plays, I started writing them about 7 or 8 years ago, and they've been performed at vegetarian societies throughout the country, and very well received. They were based largely on my book, Famous Vegetarians, which is a biographical history of veganism and vegetarianism from antiquity to the present. Starting with the Buddha, who was the earliest attested figure in history, was vegetarian or vegan. He's actually a vegan. And in the West, his counterpart in the West was a man named, does anyone know? Who was the Western counterpart of the Buddha?
Jesus.
No, actually it was Pythagoras. He founded the first historically attested vegetarian vegan society in ancient Greece. Members had to his order had to take a vegan vow. And he believed it was conducive to higher thinking. His order was sort of the prototype of the Platonic Academy and the modern university. And he was also renowned as an athletics trainer. So, and the word Pythagorean was actually the term of art for practicing vegan until the 19th century, when the term was superseded by the word vegetarian itself, which was coined in England, and the term vegan, which was coined a century later.
The show must go on.
Yeah, okay. So all of these, this is just the beginning. So all of these characters, these 7 characters, are seminal figures in the vegan movement, from antiquity to the present. So without further ado, let the show begin.
Right. So,
As a playwright, Rin might be sitting on a chair looking down and watching all the action since he wrote the play. But for tonight, like all of us, we've got our shirt sleeves shortened and we're getting to work, and he's running the video, the graphics. The PowerPoint. Here are our volunteer actors. Your name?
Jonathan Mason.
Jonathan will be playing the part of Chunda.
Amy Holt.
Amy will be playing the part of the novice monk.
Herman Laverne Jones.
Herman will be playing the Buddha.
I'm the nondescript narrator.
Just an invisible kind of guy behind the scenes, narrating. Are we ready for action? Scene 1.
You got the mic. The Buddha was invited to dinner at the house of a metalsmith named Chandra. In ancient India, metalsmiths were viewed with awe for their ability to transform lumps of shapeless metal into useful objects. They occupy positions of high social rank. The Buddha and the other dinner guests are reclining on couches. Chandra himself, ever the gracious host, is serving them vegan dishes on palm leaves. He arrives at the Buddha's couch and serves him a palm leaf filled with fresh mushrooms that have been marinated in a rather tart-tasting dressing.
Here are some delicious mushrooms, Siddhartha. We know how much you enjoy them.
Thank you, Chandra. You are too kind.
The Buddha eats the mushrooms with gusto, without pausing to taste them. Chandra claps his hands, and a waiter brings in a luscious mango for the Buddha's main course.
That was a splendid mango, Chanda. One of the best I've ever tasted. But the mushrooms have made me feel a bit queasy. Chanda, I could be wrong, but I believe that those mushrooms were tainted. Take them out and bury them so that no human or animal may come into contact with them. Excuse me, but I must lie down for a few minutes.
Scene 2. In a large bamboo hut where the Buddha and his entourage are stopping for the night, the Buddha is lying on a reed mat that serves as his bed. The time is mid-afternoon, and the Buddha, who is usually to be found sitting in meditation or preaching to his fellow monks, is seemingly inert and lifeless. But at the approach of a young female novice monk, females were admitted to the Buddha's Shangha on an equal footing with men. He sits bolt upright on the mat and begins conversing animately.
How do you fare, my lord?
I am still not strong and am becoming weaker.
Was it what you ate?
Yes. I believe it was those seasoned mushrooms that Chandra prepared for me. They were very tasty, but when I got home, I vomited them and the delicious mango.
The mushrooms. Perhaps they were venomous?
Yeah, you could be right. It is so hard to tell the poisonous mushrooms from the edible ones. If so, I doubt if I was able to expel all the toxins through regurgitation. What worries me most is that if I die, people will think I ate some animal food. It's commonplace among the Brahmins.
How unfortunate that would be for your teaching.
Yes, I know. We have dedicated our adult life to abolishing animal sacrifice and the superstitious eating of animal flesh. I feel that someday, centuries hence, corrupt priests, such as the Dalai Lama, will tamper with my teachings. They may even say that I died from eating pork. The word of which is similar to the word for mushrooms in our language.
I tremble to think so.
But what is more important is the suffering occasioned by the torturing and eating of animals. This creates an endless chain of karmic debt and retribution. The person who eats another creature runs the risk of being eaten himself in the next life. I've told you how the Jank monk, who had great wisdom and prescience, was forced by a violent thunderstorm to take refuge in a wayward inn. There he witnessed a middle-aged couple preparing animal flesh. The monk had the power to see into a person's previous incarnations.
Yes. He saw that the wife who was cooking a chicken was about to eat the flesh of her dead sister, as her sister had been reincarnated in the chicken. And the husband, who was butchering a steer, was slaughtering his own father. Horrified, the monk fled the inn and ran back into the storm, preferring to dodge lightning bolts than to stay and witness more horrors.
Good. You have remembered.
Is eating animal flesh always depraved, my lord?
You ask because it has come to my ears that you yourself are eating animal flesh with a Brahmin recently. Is that true?
Yes, my lord.
That's something I can't tolerate in my Chandra. You cannot call yourself either a follower of mine, much less a friend, if you eat the flesh of an animal or consume anything of animal origin, such as the exudate of a cow's bladder, milk or eggs or honey, which is regurgitate of bees. Have I not made my meaning clear?
Yes, I should have known. But I did not want to insult my host. I was a guest at the Bremen's house. He sacrificed a fatted calf for us. How could I have insulted him in front of the assembled guests by refusing to eat what he had so carefully prepared?
Which insult is the greater? Which insult is the greater? To the host who is murdering another creature, or to the animal whose life is being ripped from his body so that you may chew on his flesh?
But the animal was killed in a holy manner. Bremen dedicated the calf sold to the Lord Indra.
No human should have the power of life and death over another animal. This Lord Indra is a figment of the imagination, as are all of the so-called gods. What exalt being would demand the life blood of another creature?
What you say is irrefutable, my lord. But were you not yourself raised in that religion?
That is the religion of the Aryan invaders. It was they who imposed the ritual of animal sacrifice and the caste system on native people of our country.
But were you not raised as a warrior prince?
Yes. But I renounced my title and all of the prerequisites when I was 25.
Yes, you left your cloistered life. You had startling experiences.
Yes. There were 3 salient ones. For the first time in my sheltered life, I saw a begging man, a menacing. I saw a decomposing man, a corpse. And I saw a fasting man, an ascetic.
This changed you.
Yes. It made me want to live a whole life, to start life afresh, practice shamanism, which, as you know, is the indigenous religion of our people. It is the most conscientious practice by the Maharaja and the Jains. That is the practice that I embraced, but I made it my own. Although I'm invited, if the Maharaja and other followers of the shamanic path, I simplify it and try to make it easier for people like you, dear one, to practice it.
My lord, something has been vexing me.
Yes, dear one?
Must we still observe the commandments on drinking intoxicants and being chaste? Those are such onerous ones to keep.
In fact, as I like to say, Ajama, Parama, Dima. Ajama is paramount teaching. You are allowed to violate the other commandments in the serving of preserving life. That shows you how high a value we set upon life.
Yes, but I am not always sure how to understand this.
For instance, if a hunter approaches you in the forest and asks you which way the deer went, you're allowed to break the commandment on telling truth. Sata, and tell him a lie. Tell him the deer went in the wrong direction.
Does this also hold for the commandment against stealing, asteya?
Yes. When he is not looking, you're allowed to steal his bow and arrows. Remember, all life is sacred, and the murder of another being, whether one is a hunter or a priest, is a violation of the overriding law of Ashima.
The Buddha clutches his stomach as he weakens further.
So, if you steal to prevent the greater theft, that of another being life, then you have not erred. You have, in fact, performed a heroic action.
You are faltering, my lord, but know that you have opened my eyes. Oh, those wretched mushrooms of Chunda.
Hovering in the background, like a villain in a cheap melodrama, Chandra chortles diabolically while twirling his mustaches.
The end.
The sum of the squares of two sides of the right triangle.
First of all, as you know, Theano, the theorem is not original with me. I learned it from the gymnosophists when I traveled to India. Not only did I acquire my theorem from them, for they were brilliant mathematicians, but I incorporated their ethical vegetarianism and their doctrine of samsara, which I call metempsychosis as well.
The gymnosophists really impressed you, didn't they?
Apart from their ingenuity as mathematicians and geometers, I was struck by their compassion for other beings. It is almost an obsession with them to avoid inflicting pain on other creatures. They have a word for it, ahimsa, for which we have no equivalent in Greek. It means non-violence to all living creatures, including ants and other crawling insects. In fact, they go out of their way to avoid treading on bugs.
They protest vigorously against animal sacrifice.
Yes, that's what gave me the idea to hold counter-sacrifices at the Temple of Apollo at Delos. As we've talked about, their state religion, like ours, encourages the sacrifice of animals. So the gymnosophists, led by a naked ascetic named Mahavira and another renunciant named Siddhartha Gautama, risked their lives to protest the killing, cooking, and eating of animals by their butcher priests, whom they call Brahmins.
Are their efforts bearing fruit?
Yes, the erstwhile animal-sacrificing Brahmins have become vegetarians, and Hinduism enjoys a vegetarian vegetable diet on its followers now. As you mentioned, I go to the Temple of Apollo at Delos and make bloodless offerings of fruits and vegetables to show the Hellenists how a true sacrifice should be conducted, not with the flesh and blood of living beings, but with fruits and vegetables.
And without fire, Pythagoras. You make sacrifice without fire. Because, as you say, the cooking and eating of animals begins with fire. Prometheus, the pyrophoros, slew the first ox.
Yes, my dear, Prometheus gave humans the dubious gift of fire so they could kill animals and roast their flesh. But this cooking of food and eating of flesh is debasing humanity.
Which is why our brightest pupils eat unfired vegan food.
Yes, an unfired vegan diet is conducive to higher thought. So the mathematicoid like you, Theano, are required to eat raw fruits and nuts so they can be pure mathematicians. And that's the way the ancestral Hellenists ate, an unfired vegan diet comprising fruits, vegetables, and nuts. It is because it became fashionable among the Aristoi and the newly rich to eat cooked animal flesh that this malignant trend started to spread. That's why I'm trying to wage a campaign against it. Cooked food is tainted with sacrificial fire.
I can't imagine that anyone would want to eat food that has been singed or blackened by fire. As you know, my parents raised me on a poor vegetable food. I've never tasted cooked food, much less cooked animal flesh. How can food be nourishing if it resembles a dead body on a funeral pyre? That which is dead and lifeless cannot be food.
That's right, it's doubly dead. The dead animal is rendered even deader by cooking it. Cooked food is prohibited to my followers, not only because of its lack of nutriment, but because of its association with fiery animal sacrifices.
Oh, dear Pythagoras, I still think it would be tragic if people remembered you only for mathematical theories and did not remember you for your teachings on compassion for animals.
At the moment I am famous, not for my school of philosophy, nor for my teaching of compassion for animals, but for having coached that young man to victory in the Olympic Games in 5 successive Olympiads, an unparalleled feat.
That was a brilliant stroke to train Milo Oct2013 to be a champion wrestler on raw food vegan diet, when other coaches were putting their prankrotos on a beef diet. He is undefeated in every agron. He won the boys wrestling event at Olympia in 540 BC, the senior event in 5 successful Olympiads between 532 and 516 BC, as well as 6 times in the Athenian Games, 10 times the Ishman, and 9 times the Neman. His unparalleled record has made him the most successful athlete in the cosmos. He has brought worldwide fame to your unfired vegan regime. Oh, Pythagoras.
Yes, they refer to it as the Pythagorean diet. Now, coaches from all over Greece are copying me and putting their diets on the Pythagorean program.
Think of it. Milo's never been brought to his knees. He is a demigod, a young Hercules.
Theano, don't say that. I resent the comparison to Heracles. Heracles was a depraved demigod. He wears the skins of animals. All 12 of his infamous labors involved the killing and torturing of other creatures.
But they were monsters.
They were sentient creatures. With his immense strength and cunning, Heracles could have subdued them and pacified them. He did not need to slaughter them so cruelly.
But Heracles is the founder of our fair city, Croton.
Then our city has had inauspicious beginnings. The order is doomed. Fortunately, I give no credence to those impostors who dwell on Mount Olympus. Those fiends who snort the smoke from animal sacrifices. The only god whom I revere is Apollo, the life-giver, to whom I offer harvest fruits at his temple at Delos. The only other Olympian whom I respect is my Olympic champion protege, Milo. He's no Heracles. He's a gentle giant who wouldn't harm the proverbial fly.
But how do you reconcile his gentleness with his having slaughtered so many Sybarites when he took the field as a general in the war between Croton and Sybaris?
The Sybarites are rapacious flesh eaters. They live only to fill their bellies with exquisitely perfumed and cooked animal corpses. They have menaced us and taunted us with and mocked our asceticism for decades. We had no choice but to wage war with them in self-defense.
Well, even on the battlefield, your Milo was undefeated. He is a gift to you and your hygienic principles. You will always be remembered as his trainer, if not his teacher of geometry.
Kleos, or fame, doesn't really interest me. It was an obsession for the Homeric heroes and remains an idée fixe even for most Hellenists today. But if I'm to be remembered, I hope it will be for all my accomplishments, for championing the unfired vegan diet, for putting the greatest athlete the world has ever known on this diet, for the music of the spheres. The square on the hypotenuse of a right triangle equals the sum of the squares on the other 2 sides. The sacred order of numbers. All are connected to compassionate living. The universe cannot function efficiently if moral laws are flouted, like the killing, cooking, and eating of our fellow creatures.
You always emphasize that we do not use geometry, like the Egyptians, to survey the land or for other utilitarian purposes. For instance, we are using it to erect a platform, an infinite scaffolding, if you like, on which epsilon, man may lift his soul into the inferior realms.
Well said, my dear. To project our souls into the highest realms, we can use geometry, and we must follow a diet that will enable our souls to reach the spiritual heights to which we aspire.
Ta-da. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, right. And this is sort of a spoof of the Da Vinci Code.
I don't know how many of you have read the Da Vinci Code or seen the movie, but this is a biographical play of Jesus, as depicting him as an Essene, or a member of an anti-sacrificial vegan sect, and it's kind of it spoofs the Da Vinci Code. So.
The scene is set along the seashore. The smiling Savior, Jesus Christ, appears out of the mists to be interviewed by a tenacious newspaper reporter named Magda. As a God, Jesus had the prerogative and the power to appear and disappear at his whim. Befitting a God, he is omniscient and an omnivorous reader who seems to have read everything except the Da Vinci Code. The time is the 21st century. Action.
Tell me, sir, it has been rumored that you are a vegetarian. Is that true?
Yes, Magda. Not only was it true 2,008 years ago, but it is also true now. In fact, I was then and am now a vegan raw foodist.
But what about the miracle of the feeding of the multitudes, when you are reported to have fed 4,000 people by endlessly multiplying loaves and fishes?
In the first place, that incident didn't happen in the way that it has been narrated in the Gospels. As Irenaeus mentioned in his book Against All Heresies, I multiplied loaves, not fishes. It is wrong to eat fish, eggs, dairy products, honey, or any substance of animal origin.
You mean you didn't multiply fish for the multitudes?
The very notion of multiplying fish as if they were inanimate objects with no individual personalities is odious to me.
What did your little act of prestidigitation involve then?
I don't like your fast-fingered word prestidigitation because I do not perform cheap conjuring tricks. Fact is, I tore the loaves into little pieces, tiny little pieces. Then I told the multitudes to dip these little pieces into the opsaria, or relish. As RBerry was the first to point out in his book, Food for the Gods, in the Gospel of John, the word opsaria has been mistranslated. Its first meaning is not fish, but relish.
Then why are you so closely identified with fish, and with the seeming magical production of them?
I am the anthropoichthus, the world teacher of the Piscarian age. The equinoxes precessed into the astrological sign of Pisces, the fish, when I was born.
Why did you select your disciples from among fishermen?
Because I loathe fishing. I converted them from fishermen into fishers of men. In other words, I trained them to become anti-fishermen, ethical eaters of fruits and vegetables. At my behest, they quit fishing and became evangelists for my cause.
In fact, the fish has been one of the most ravaged species on this planet, almost from the dawn of the age of the Pisces.
Yes, I have toiled for 2,000 years and more to rescue and emancipate them, to little effect, alas.
What about after the resurrection, when in Luke you asked for fish?
You of all people should know that that is not true. Your namesake, Mary Magdalene, was the first to see me after my resurrection. She was my first apostle.
Then why was she edited out of the Gospels?
The scribes and propagandists of the church tampered with the truth to make me look more human. But as an ethical vegetarian, I could not have been more human. It is inhuman to eat the corpses of animals.
But why did you come out and denounce meat eating in the Gospels?
Well, I do in Matthew 15. The author quoted me correctly when he reported that I said, "I desire mercy and not sacrifices." You see, that's how animals were consumed in the ancient world, in the form of sacrificial flesh in the temples.
Is that why you went into the temple and overturned the tables of the money changers?
Yes, people consumed meat mainly in religious edifices in my times. They bought and sold animals within the sacred precincts. The priests were the butchers, and the butchers were the priests. That's why I took direct action. I made a scourge of rope, overturned the tables of the money changers who were buying and selling animals for sacrifices, and tried to put a stop to the whole bloody business.
Is that why you yourself were crucified?
Yes, my child, but it was worth it to save one animal life. It was worth it.
What do you think of the organized church?
It bears no resemblance to the Nazorians and the Ebionites, the original Jewish anti-sacrificial sect that my family continued after my death. In a word, the organized church is a sham, a travesty of everything I stood for. The clergy, including the Pope himself, swill on cooked food and the corpses of the very creatures that I've been born to emancipate and to save from the merciless maws and jaws of men and women.
The Crusades, the annihilation of the vegetarian Catholics in the 12th century, so many pogroms, Holocaust, so many atrocities have been committed in your name. How do you feel about that?
It lacerates my heart. Every day I weep tears of unspeakable anguish.
What do you think of Da Vinci's Last Supper?
Leo got it right in that gorgeous fresco, didn't he? The man clutching a dagger to my extreme right represents the menacing and corrupt Orthodox Church. Furthermore, there is no meat on the table because the way is a fleshless repast, which is how all meals should be observed.
Have you read Dan Brown's book, The Da Vinci Code?
I wouldn't waste my time on such trash, but I did see the movie. Ron Howard's one of my favorite directors after Mel, The Passion of the Christ, Gibson, and Martin, The Last Temptation of Christ, Scorsese.
Well, in it, Dan Brown asserts that before you died, you fathered a child on Mary Magdalene.
That much of the Da Vinci Code is true, so far as it goes. But she did not move to France to found a Merovingian royal dynasty. That is errant nonsense. Rather, she moved to the Italian Riviera, where it is much easier to be a vegan raw fooder, and where she and our offspring could protest the abominable practice of fishing. They tried to convert the fishermen on the coast to fishers of men, evangelists for the new religion of animal emancipation and veganism that I founded. But need I belabor the obvious? Their efforts were negatory.
What became of Magdalena then?
I sired upon her a long line of animal rights activists and vegan raw fooders like me. For generations, they have clandestinely sabotaged the fishing nets of fishing folk on the Amalfi Coast. They set off early in the morning to warn the fish that their pursuers are on the way. They foul nets and destroy fish traps wherever they find them. It is a thankless task, but they are doing the Lord's, in effect, my work in this issue.
I, too, am an animal liberationist and a vegan raw foodist from birth. I've always wondered about my own pedigree.
Yes, my child, you are, in fact, the offspring of our lines, Magdalena and mine.
May I call you father?
Yes, my child.
Are there any critics in the audience? Anyone want to,
Take my wife, please.
Yeah, the word for fish in Greek is ichthus, and the plural ichthua. And the word that's used in John is opsaria, which means, the first meaning of which is relish. And the fourth meaning is little fish. So instead of using the first meaning, which is the most widely used, he selected the fourth meaning, the translator. It was it's a mistranslation of the word obsaria, which really means relish. That's how it's used throughout.
what would the relish be?
Well, like tahini, for example, or pickled olives. I mean, that's how people ate in antiquity. They took a piece of bread, which was highly nutritious. They would tear off a fragment and dip it into the relish and consume it. That was the staff of life. The bread was very nutritious in those days, not like the white fluff that one finds in supermarkets. Full of enzymes and vitamins. So that's it was a mistranslation, and I think I was the first to point that out. Not that ancient historians have a carnivorous bias. It's just they're not interested in showing that there might have been an alternative interpretation of the word Opsnon or Opsarium. So yeah, I studied Greek in college, and I still read it for recreation. So I was familiar with the text. I translated the text. I hope that answers your question. Great. Unfortunately, I have to apologize. It's not at its hasn't reached the peak of perfection. But this is about Hypatia, who was a Pythagorean, disciple of Pythagoras, and she flourished in the 5th century AD. She was a mathematician, astronomer, and a vegan, also a vegan. And the plot turns on this fateful encounter with a patriarch named Cyril, who was trying to forcibly convert her to Christian, sort of dogmatic Christianity. And she refused, and eventually she was assassinated by a mob of his followers.
Got it? Ready?
Hypatia, why do you choose to remain a pagan?
Because I am a Pythagorean, an anti-sacrificial abstainer from animal flesh.
But it was we Christians who abolished animal sacrifice.
But in your refectories, you gorge on animal flesh. You did not abolish sacrifice in the same spirit that Jesus did when he went into the temple to liberate the animals. You simply wanted to disempower the non-Christians.
Hypatia, your teachings are dangerous. I cannot answer for the actions of my followers. They have told me that they want to violate you and to scrape the flesh from your bones with sharpened seashells. Come to your senses. Renounce your pagan, Pythagoreanism, and join us.
What you are proposing is to make me into a sacrifice to your God, which is not Jesus, the vegan animal liberator, but to megalomania.
That is a grave insult. I will give you one more chance to renounce your pagan beliefs and embrace Christ.
I do embrace Christ, Jesus Christ, the Ebionite vegan animal liberator who gave his life in order to put a stop to the sacrificing of animals in the Temple of Jerusalem. That is the Jesus I believe in, the true Jesus.
You are blaspheming our Lord. I cannot answer for what my followers will do to you if you do not recant immediately.
I cannot recant. That word implies that I have propounded a heresy. I have not. It is you, Cyril, who should recant for falsifying the teachings of Jesus for political reasons. Are you and the princes of the church so fond of eating perfumed corpses that you will not follow the dietary imperatives of Jesus and the Ebionites?
You are spouting around pagan nonsense. Why do you make a cult of Jesus' dietary idiosyncrasies? Be reasonable. You have the spirit of Plato and the body of Aphrodite. I would hate to see any harm come to your beautiful mind. Your mind and your spirit.
For Jesus, Pythagoreanism is not a dietary idiosyncrasy. On the contrary, right eating meant everything to him. He was primarily a food reformer. He came to abolish the sacrifice and eating of animals in the temple and to restore the vegan Torah.
But the pagans also sacrificed animals to Zeus and to Poseidon and Apollo.
But not at the temple of Apollo at Delos, where Pythagoras sacrificed fruits and vegetables to Apollo to demonstrate how a sacrifice should properly be conducted.
But the Greeks and Romans continued to sacrifice animals. Pythagoras' big-hearted gesticulations at the temple of Apollo were futile.
Originally, there was a mother goddess religion that reigned all over the world. It was overthrown by warrior tribes and their belligerent deities. You are trying to turn Jesus into one of those priapic and bellicose male gods, whereas he was an emissary of peace and nonviolence through veganism.
That's it?
Yeah, there's just.
There is a narration at the end. Cyril's followers, in their hundreds, are milling about outside her house. They call for her to come out so they can parley with her. When she refuses, they storm her house and assault her violently. They scrape the flesh from her limbs with sharpened seashells.
Ouch.
True story.
True story. Okay, we're going to take a brief intermission.
By RBerry. Leonardo da Vinci is seated before a large canvas to which he is applying brush strokes meditatively, as if he was more interested in conversing than painting. The lady who is sitting for her portrait is La Gioconda, or the Mona Lisa.
Hold that smile. I want to capture its inscrutable sweetness.
It's you who evokes the smile there. Whenever I talk to you, I am fascinated by your multifarious activities.
I like to keep busy. Was it Aristotle who said, energia is the ruling principle of life?
You're nothing if not energetic. I heard that you made a bat costume and threw yourself off the roof of the Casa Vecchio. Is that true?
I was testing the airworthiness of those marvelous wings. I wanted to soar above the earth and be free of its two-legged groundlings.
If you had died, then I would have had no one to immortalize me.
Ah, signora. An artist from my school could have finished the job, and no one would have been the wiser.
But no one can paint like you. And they say you are as strong as a horse, which I don't see how you could be on that diet of fruits and salads that you live on.
Si, signora. I prefer to live on unheated fruits and vegetables, which is the diet that the strongest animals live on. The horse, the ox, the apes, the rhinoceros.
Do you see that table over there? On it, you will find a horseshoe, which I had my manservant, Giamacco, fetch from our stables. Just out of curiosity, I would like to see if you can really bend it. They say you are the only man in Europe, or at least in Florence, who can bend a horseshoe with his bare hands, which I don't see how you can do that with such a preposterous diet of yours.
Primo, signora, let me just say that what a detestable thing it is to put iron shoes on horses by driving nails through their hooves. It makes me think of the nails driven into the hands and feet of our Lord Jesus. Anguished expression. Is it not a sign that of the noble creature's enslavement? Our warriors ride their horses into battle, heedless of how many may be mutilated or shot from under them. We use horses to lift and carry burdens that we, puny human beings, are not capable of moving. Not a few humans in France and Belgium and the Netherlands actually cook their horse's flesh and eat it after they have performed their service on the farm or the battlefield. Signora, I will bend this horseshoe to symbolize, at least in my mind, the end of their enslavement and servitude to bipeds.
Thank you, Leo. You are a marvel. Tell me, Leo, is it true what I've heard that you go into the market and buy poultry and game birds? Instead of taking them home to eat them, you take them into the forest and release them.
Si, signora.
Why this foolish eccentricity?
Signora, I have many eccentricities, it is true. But that is not one of them. I cannot bear to see birds who were meant to soar above the earth, be caged and tormented so humans may eat them. I wish that I could buy every captive animal that I see and restore to it its freedom.
What high-flown sentiments and winged words. I knew that you had un petit faiblesse for animals, but I thought it was because you were an invert like Michelangelo.
Signora, I am neither homo nor heterosexual. Tell the truth, I am asexual. Through my anatomical researches on cadavers in the morgues of Rome and of Florence, I have come to regard the bodies of males and females as mere channels for the flow of excrement. Carnivorous excrement at that, which is evil-smelling and repugnant. The thought of touching another person's sexual organs is odious.
That doesn't stop you from keeping company with good-looking men.
I have as many handsome female friends as male friends. I reiterate, Signora, I find the organs of generation so repulsive that it is a miracle to me that humans can continue their species.
Then why are you so fond of brute creatures?
Signora, I am a Pythagorean. I have from an early age abjured the use of animal products. Mark my words, the time will come when men such as I will look upon the murder of animals as they now look upon the murder of men.
But you yourself take the murder of men rather lightly. Do you not, Leo? If you are so compassionate, then why do you hire yourself out as a military engineer to the mightiest princes in the land?
Because humans are the bane of animals, the scourge of everything that moves and lives.
But I have seen your designs for catapults and cannons and other killing machines. But I have...
Signora, I will answer you this way, with some jottings from my diaries. Peruse it if you please.
Oh, how many there will be that cannot come to birth? What does that mean, Leo?
Of eggs who cannot from chickens because humans eat them.
Oh, how foul a thing it is to see the tongue of one animal in the guts of another. What is that?
Of the tongues of pigs and calves in sausage skins.
In many parts of the country, men will be walking on the skins of beasts.
Of leather shoes.
And many others will be deprived of their food and will be cruelly submerged and drowned by folk devoid of reason.
Of bees being drowned for their honey.
What a wicked thing is for flesh to be the tomb of flesh.
Signora, Signora, when they eat the flesh of other animals, humans turn their bodies into living tombs. And that's why I loathe the humans. That's why I want to build the biggest cannon to blow them all to hell. so that the earth may become a paradise for animals. Oh, justice! Oh, God! Why does now not awake and behold all creatures ill-used?
Leo, you know, I was planning to have fish and chicken for dinner, but now I don't know whether I can ever eat meat again. I have to become a Pythagorean like you.
As she gazes into the distance, hold that smile. That's just the expression I want. Okay. Bring your friends. Tell your friends to bring their friends. Not just because it's free food, but because this message is what we really want every one of you to bring to your circle of acquaintances, to your family, to people that you care about. And why? Because the more people that do this, the better it is for every one of us. Okay, thank you. Go to the EarthState website. We have lots of materials. Take the literature, and since we don't actually have to step out right now, Herman, would you like to mention anything more about the I Have a Dream project?